večer svima. Lijepo vas pozdravljam u ime Gradske knjižnice i u svoje ime na još jednoj tribini Žive knjige. Veselje mi je predstaviti večerašnje goste. To su gospodin Mladen Tarbuk, skladatelj i dirigent, predsjednik Hrvatskog društva skladatelja, i Andrew Norris, umjetnik, slikar, režiser, skladatelj, kuhar. Večeras će Andrew, budući da je Englez iz Londona, govoriti na engleskom, iako je studirao hrvatski u Londonu.
Želim se ispričati unaprijed ako pričam na engleskom, jer ja znam nekakav selski jezik, ali za večeras to mi je nije dovoljno, ne znam dosta riječi na hrvatskom. Dakle,
zato imamo našu prevoditeljicu, gospođu Loktin, koja će pomoći da svi skupa bolje razumijemo što se ovdje događa. Pa evo, ja bi se obratila Andrew. Rođen si u Južnom Londonu.
Točno, yeah. Born in 1961 in South London, a little place called Norbury. Sounds like a village, but it's really part of the metropolis. But so I was born there, and after a few years we moved further out to a little bit more countrified places.
Jesi li bio sretno dijete u Engleskoj kad si bio, jesi li imao sretno djetinjstvo?
I had a wonderful childhood. I was very happy. I was pretty much left to my own devices to do whatever I wanted to do. The period was different then. There was not the worry about letting your children out on a bicycle. So I was surrounded by parkland. I would go off and meet my friends. And it was a very, very nice childhood, yeah. She was a very clever person, but she was bringing up 3 children on her own, so she didn't have a lot of time to worry about us. My brother and sister are older than me, so they kind of looked after me. I'm not quite sure what my father was doing, but it was something to do with fashion design. My grandfather was a designer back in the 1950s, but my father had a secondary kind of occupation connected with fashion.
Studirao si hrvatski jezik u Londonu.
Yeah. Diplomirao sam na fakultetu Londona, ali bio sam jedini student, dakle pasivno sam naučio.
Kako si se odlučio doći živjeti u Hrvatsku i napustiti Englesku, zbog ljubavi, ili kako je to krenulo? Ti si došao naime u ratni Dubrovnik prije puno godina, 1992. godine, i ispričaj nam nešto o tome.
Well, it happened purely by chance. I was walking through London, through Covent Garden, and by chance I saw a picture I'd recognized from the newspaper at the end of a corridor. And I went down this corridor, and there was an exhibition of photographs of destroyed cultural monuments. And I was so shocked by that, I thought, I must go to this country. What's this country called, by the way? Croatia. What is Croatia? I don't know anything about the country. So I made a note of all the people on the credit panel who helped to organize the exhibition. And so I telephoned everybody on the list until I got to the lady who'd organized the exhibition. And her name was Jadranka Beresford-Pierce. And she is the sister of the artist Ljerka Nješ.
Ljerka Nješ?
Yeah. And I spoke to her and I said to her, I've seen your exhibition, I want to go to Croatia, I will pay for it all myself, I just need an introduction. And she put me in touch with a man called Ante Soric, who was the director of Mimira at the time. He liked the idea, and 6 weeks later I arrived in Zagreb, and he put me in a room in Hotel Dubrovnik. And I spent 10 days there, and fortunately I realized after the 3rd day that the price of the hotel was going up each day. So I paid for the whole duration immediately. And during the day, Ante gave me a car, a driver, and a translator. And we traveled around various villages and towns around. And the driver was a soldier, so we got beyond the checkpoints and we delivered provisions to outlying villages. Also, Ante Soric gave me a room in Kuala to use as a studio, which was really fantastic. But no one told me that they fire a cannon at midday every day.
No nitko mi nije rekao da svakog dana točno u podne se ispaljuje iz topa u Kulilotrščak.
I won't go further into detail about that, but it was a fantastic 10 days, and I came back to London and I spent 9 months in my studio working on a series of paintings and organised an exhibition. And I borrowed an empty shop in a very fashionable part of London, and I took over the space. I put tape all over the walls of the big glass front, covered the floor with broken glass, burnt wood, bricks, all kinds of war debris. And I borrowed some of the photographs that I had originally seen. So I had my paintings and the photographs all around this empty shop. I also made a book in which the pages are made of grass, and on each page I have stuck painted photographs which I'd found in newspapers, and all kinds of intimate personal items which kind of rubbish, the debris that is left after some tragic event. And this work was bought by the Victoria and Albert Museum for the National Art Book Library. It's a piece of bread and a piece of a gold chain. This is another victim here.
From there?
These are all from Croatia, these victims.
Ay, horrible. Horrible.
This picture, this chap was the first victim in Zagreb. I think he was waiting at a tram station when a shell landed.
So is the picture from the press?
Yeah, and I just painted over them. This is a guy who was, killed and just shoved under some bushes, and then a piece of barbed wire with a piece of cloth attached to it. And that really began my love affair with this country. After the exhibition, I felt a tremendous anticlimax, so I wanted to keep some connection with Croatia. And the woman, Jadranka, I worked with her afterwards to organize an auction to sell paintings, because she had set up a fund to raise money to restore these destroyed cultural monuments. And then I came back to Croatia in '94, and this is when we went by boat down to Dubrovnik. And a year after that, I started to learn the language, in '95. In 1997, I left my job and I went to London University to study language, literature and history, but as I said, I was the only student there, so it was pretty lonely, more professors than students. This is part of a new project of in my village. There used to be lots of mlakas around where the cattle used to drink.
Ovo je dio jednog novog projekta. U selu u kojem živim je u prošlosti bilo mnogo mlaka iz kojih je pila stoka.
Selo se zove Bukovlje i nalazi se blizu Karlovca, na Mrežnici je.
They've all been filled in, and this is the last one which I'm trying to save, so I've been clearing it out and making it a subject for painting. It's a wonderful subject.
Sve te mlake su nažalost zatrpane danas. Ova je jedina posljednja koja je ostala. Ja ju čistim, ja ju održavam i odlučio sam ju naslikati.
Dobro, Andrew, sada bismo pustili jedan Andrew film.
It has been more than 10 years since I came to Bukovlje. From the beginning, I immediately felt at home in the village. I liked to walk a lot. If I happened to meet anyone, I would start a conversation. There was mutual curiosity. People were generous with their time, and I would hear a wealth of stories. As I listened to these stories, I would try to put all the pieces into some coherent order, to try to make sense of the complicated network of connections between friends and families. The only evidence of a life well lived remained in the stories. When the deceased were mentioned, it was as if they were still among the living. Many had been larger-than-life, almost legendary characters.
Taj pokojni Marko Matić je možda za mene legenda.
Cigaretom za uhu. On je frkal dolare, metni za uho, a to bože kako je on frajer, ženske tražu.
Janko je bio visok, lep, zgodan čovjek. Fin, dobar čovjek bio. Mama njega uvažavala, ona njega jako volila, bolje nego svoje rođeno dice.
Bukovlja has changed so much even in my time. The loss of cattle, the fields now abandoned, the death of neighbours whose names are still woven into conversation. Who are these people? How can we ever know them? As I walked around the village, I would often ask to see the family photo album, in order to put a face to a name. Over the years, I often heard of one person in particular. I knew him from just a single photograph. Everyone spoke well of him.
Drago i posebno mi je, posebno mi je drag.
Pa Dragan je bil, dobar je dečko bil on i, mislim, pristojan, kulturan. Imal je rječnik kao neki odvjetnik.
Someone even mentioned that a short piece of film existed of this shy individual, whose empty house I pass every day. I knew he had a passion for singing until he drowned, and the river carried away his voice. Where is he now? Where does he fit into the village? Search the cemetery in vain for his name, which has yet to be inscribed on the family monument. I inquired about this film, but to no avail, until one day the trail led me to a box, languishing in a cupboard in Italy. And here he is, captured in a mere 24 seconds of footage, and a fleeting moment where we get to hear the sound of his voice.
Ne snima, ne može to snimati. Pazi, nemojte mi ovo prekinuti tu cvijeće.
The video ends abruptly, much as his life did. But why should this matter? Why should such a short fragment of film be of any significance? I once commented to Mika how I imagined that everyone in the village must have 100 stories. His reply was decisive.
Nema sto priča, to je priča jedna u selu I gotovo, nema sto priča. To je u selu jedna priča.
When I heard this, I came to understand how the village should be read. That the village is like a thick piece of rope made up of 100 strands. On their own, each strand carries no weight, but collectively, that is what gives the rope its strength, just as when stories are collected and considered together. In that way, they give the village its character, its history, and its identity.
This short piece of film of Dragan, lasting no more than 24 seconds, is but just one thin strand.
Ja mislim da je ovo bio jedan iskreni pljesak, nema nas puno, ali sad ću pitati Mladena kako mu se dopao film.
Pa film je podsjetio na Gabriela Garciju Marqueza. Dakle, to je jedan svijet koji nekako kreće od onoga što je realno, onoga što znamo, ali onda odmiče u ono fantastično, u ono što je nevidljivo. Mi to zovemo i realnim ili nadrealnim, ali to u stvari kada puno više utječe na naše živote nego ono što smatramo realnošću.
Kako ti se dopala muzika?
Pa vrlo ugođajna, dakle vrlo odgovarala tom svijetnom karakteru, jer je ipak radi se o nekoj prošlosti, jel? Dakle, priziva nas nekako to što je bilo, u stvari ispričano u životu tog sela. I nekako ostaje praznina, jel? Dakle, toga više danas nema. Dakle, ima jedna lijepa rečenica koja kaže, Andrew kaže kako je samo u ovom kratkom periodu u kojem je on može zamijetiti te promjene, jel?
Yeah. And half these people have died now.
Yeah, half of them.
Yeah, already.
And there are probably no youngsters who are...
They're moving out. Yeah. But I have one confession, why this, for me, it's a very moving film, especially the 24 seconds of Dragan. He was not someone who did anything special with his life, but he helped people. But to have the sound of his voice, and my only regret in life is that I never got an audio recording of my father's voice.
A sada bi se malo posvetila Mladenu Tarbuku. No dobro, Andrew, kako ti se svidjela Mladenova kompozicija?
I like it. I was listening to a few pieces of yours, and I did have
so you are already prepared.
Yeah, no, and I had a question about one piece of yours. It was a suite for solo cello. And what intrigued me most, some of the earliest Croatian music that I heard 20 years ago, and it was music by singers in Lika. It was a very rough, raw sound, and it was so exciting. And when I heard your suite, I was so impressed that you, from my perspective, you'd combined a Baroque musical structure with, let me call it, an East European sound. And I was so excited by that, really.
Yeah, that's the method, yeah. That's the also way of thinking, because I always try somehow to have some connection to the musical past, but still, of course, there are some very deep roots.
Yes.
So I like this way of singing in Lika or Herzegovina, for instance.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So-called gange. You know, they are so singing in semitones or even quarter tones.
Quarter tones. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I do have a little gift for you.
Oh.
It's a musical one.
Mali glazbeni dar imam za vas.
These are songs which I recorded from people in the village who sadly are no longer with us, so you won't hear these songs anymore. But I've orchestrated them myself. Wow. And so one for you, Miana.
Oh, thank you very much, Andrew.
And one
thank
for
you.
you.
Very much, Andrew.
Yeah.
Odmah večeras ćeš ih poslušati, sigurna sam.
Very eager to listen.
Good. And I did a string quartet, which is on there, in which I inaugurated interviews that I did with people talking about village life into the actual notation of the music. So you hear their voices and the music follows their voices. So I'll be interested to...
Yeah, I would like her
to hear your...
That's a great idea, because I think that generally music comes and springs out of the language.
It really does, yeah. And
its
from the
own
soil.
melody, and of course, it is a very natural idea at the same time.
Pustimo gospođu.
Pokušao sam u obliku gudačkog kvarteta obraditi ove pjesme pjevačica iz Bukovlja i pjevača koji više nisu s nama, dakle nećete imati priliku više nikada ih čuti. A gospodin Tarbuk je govorio da je glazba vrlo često proizlazi iz jezika, tako da je vrlo zanimljiva ta kombinacija glasa govornog i glazbe.
But not just from the language. Music comes from the very soil where people work. You get the character in music of where people work, like people in Lika. The sound of their voices illustrates the geology and geography of where they're living.
You can say that there were mountains for sure.
Yeah. And very hard stone.
Harsh conditions of life.
Of living, yes, yeah.
Dakle, ne samo da glazba proizlazi iz jezika kojim ljudi govore, već i tako reći iz samog tla, iz karaktera okruženja u kojem žive, pa u ovoj glazbi možemo čuti tu jednu surovu konotaciju, dakle možemo biti sigurni da su planine u blizini.
Yeah, true that. Yeah.
Molim pitanja.
Kako je vaša obitelj i prijatelji, kako su reagirali kada ste odlučili 1991. ili 1992. doći u Hrvatskoj, bio je rat, bilo je opasno, je li vas neko pokušao spriječiti?
At first I didn't tell anyone.
Najprije nisam nikome ni rekao da se namjeravam preseliti u Hrvatsku.
Not until I came back safely and was working, creating the paintings in the book. But after a couple of years of my coming back here regularly, and since my mother's been here a few times, she can see why, for me, life is better for me here than, or easier here than... Yes, yeah.
Rekao sam im tek kada sam se sigurno vratio iz Hrvatske gdje sam bio. Polako su se počeli navikavati kada sam redom odlazio u Hrvatsku, čak je moja majka bila ovdje i uvidjela i razumjela je zašto je za mene život bolji i lakši ovdje nego u Ujedinjenoj Kraljevini.